Her daughter-in-law slid the soup across the table, smiling like it was a gift. Elaine Porter didn't lift the spoon. She lifted her phone. By sunset, the kitchen was wired. The bowl was evidence. The next day, Brittany's face was frozen mid-smirk in a still frame used in court. The house? Rekeyed. The will? Rewritten. And when Brittany came back for what she thought was hers, she found a subpoena. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Elaine Porter sat at the kitchen table, spine straight, eyes calm. The late afternoon light slanted through the blinds in faint stripes, catching on the polished rim of the ceramic bowl Brittany placed in front of her with theatrical care. From scratch, Brittany said, tucking a strand of bleached hair behind one ear. Just for you. The soup steamed gently. Too gently. Elaine leaned forward and stirred once, slowly. A thin slick clung to the surface oily, too bright in color. Her nose twitched. There was a faint tang beneath the scent of overboiled carrots. Not vinegar, not spice, something synthetic. She blinked once. It smells strong. Brittany tilted her head, smile razor thin. It's organic. Elaine turned the spoon in her hand, letting it hover just above the liquid. Her arm didn't tremble. Across the table, Brittany watched with too much interest, the way her lips parted, the way her fingers fidgeted against her mug, tapping some anxious rhythm into ceramic. Elaine dipped the spoon back in and raised it halfway, then stopped. Ladies first, she said lightly. Brittany's smile faltered. Elaine didn't blink. Silence bloomed, the kind that didn't feel empty but full, of what was not being said, of the little wars that happen in kitchens under Midwestern ceilings where people pretend kindness. Brittany let out a dry laugh. Come on, Elaine. Elaine's voice was a whisper, but there was iron beneath it. Just a taste. For a moment, it seemed Brittany might push back, but then she took the spoon, dipped it, and sipped. Barely half a mouthful. She said, forced. See? Totally fine. Elaine nodded once, then set her own spoon down. She didn't touch the soup again. They made small talk for 10 more minutes. Brittany talked about nothing about Ryan's job search, about a neighbor's dog barking too much, about how expensive fresh produce had gotten. Elaine listened, nodding when expected, speaking in measured phrases. The soup cooled, untouched in front of her. Brittany didn't stay long. You need rest, she said with syrupy concern, grabbing her purse. Don't strain yourself. Elaine walked her to the door. The moment it shut, Elaine turned and locked it. Then she went back to the kitchen. With gloved hands, she lifted the bowl and carried it carefully to the sink. She poured the soup slowly, watching it spiral down the drain. But near the end, something clung to the bottom. A silvery film, not oil, something heavier. She tilted the bowl under the light and caught the glint. There, a faint iridescent sheen that shimmered unnaturally. She didn't flinch. Instead, she set the bowl on the counter and took out her phone. She adjusted the angle, waited for the light to hit just right, and snapped 3 photo stop down, side angle, close up. She took a video, too, swirling the last spoonful to show the residue shifting along the edge. Then she rinsed it all down the disposal, scrubbing her hands twice. The gloves went into a sealed Ziploc. That went into the freezer. Upstairs, the house was silent, safe, for now. She opened her planner, flipped past the recipe clippings, and wrote a single sentence in bold ink. Call Carla. First thing. She looked out the window, past the garden she used to tend before Brittany started helping more often. The flowers were still blooming, but someone else had chosen what grew. Not anymore. Her phone buzzed Ryan. One text. Brittany says you didn't like her soup? Elaine stared at the screen, unmoving. Then she tapped block. She picked up the phone again, opened her voice memos, and recorded herself saying clearly, Soup delivered at 4:36 p.m., Brittany sipped once when prompted. Chemical scent noted. Photos and video captured. Possible poisoning attempt. She hit save. Then turned off the kitchen lights and walked upstairs, every step deliberate. In her bedroom, she opened the safe behind her bookshelf. Inside, a folder marked Estate, Original Docs. She stared at it for a long moment. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she whispered to herself, low and steady, Let's see what's in your recipe book, sweetheart. Carla Reyes didn't ask for pleasantries. The moment Elaine stepped into the office, shoulders squared, file folder in hand, Carla motioned her to the chair opposite her desk. "Start from the beginning," Carla said, voice low and direct. Elaine opened the folder slowly, deliberately. The first page was a printout of a voice memo, time-stamped and transcribed. The next was a glossy photo of the soup's surface, its chemical sheen glinting beneath the overhead light. Then came the screenshots, texts, call logs, and a photo of the gloves sealed in plastic. She laid them out one by one. Carla studied each item without blinking. When she got to the video, Elaine had it cued on her phone. She pressed play. The faint slosh of liquid, the shimmer along the rim. Carla leaned in. "Bleach?" she murmured. Elaine didn't answer. "I'll get it tested," Carla said, quietly, through a contact I trust. Elaine handed over a thumb drive. "There's more on here. Voice memos, screenshots. Mia recorded something too." Carla's brows lifted slightly. "Your granddaughter?" Elaine nodded. "She was upstairs. Brittany didn't know she was listening." Carla slid the flash drive into her laptop. "We'll document everything. This kind of pattern isn't uncommon, but you're ahead of the curve. Most people wait too long." Elaine's voice was soft, but steady. "I waited long enough." A pause. Then Carla leaned back and clicked her pen once. "We go two directions, immediately. First, lock down the finances. We update your will, revoke power of attorney, change all access points. Second, we build the case. Intent, pattern, audio, video. We make it undeniable." Elaine opened her purse and pulled out a folded Sheather original will. She'd already marked it in red ink. Names crossed out, margins annotated. "I want them gone," she said. "From everything." Carla's eyes didn't leave hers. "Good. Then let's make it legal." 40 minutes later, the paperwork was signed and notarized. Ryan and Brittany's names were no longer tethered to anything that belonged to Elaine, not her house, her savings, or her afterlife. As Carla scanned the final signatures, there was a knock on the door. Lena stepped inside, coat still dusted with snow. "I waited out front," she said, eyes flicking to Elaine. "Didn't want to startle." Elaine's face softened. "Thank you for coming." Lena took a seat beside her. "Told you I'd help." Carla gave her a nod. "You're the neighbor?" "I'm the guard dog." Elaine chuckled, and for a breath, the tension eased. "I've got a nanny cam in my garage," Lena said. "Looks like a smoke detector. Can get it set up in under 15 minutes. Carla handed her a slip of paper. "Here's what it needs to capture to be admissible." Lena scanned it. "Easy." Elaine took a breath. A small one, but deeper than anything she'd let herself exhale in days. Her phone buzzed on the table. Ryan Porter. "Brittany says you didn't like her soup?" She stared at the text, thumb hovering over the screen. "Don't reply," Carla said without looking up. "I wasn't going to," Elaine said flatly. Carla slid a copy of the updated will into a folder and handed it over. "We'll keep everything backed up digitally. This," she tapped the flash drive, still plugged into her laptop, "stays with me. I'll get it transcribed, labeled, and secure." Elaine tucked the file into her bag and stood. Her knees ached a little more today, but she didn't let it show. Lena followed her to the door. "I'll be over tonight. We'll get the cam up before anyone notices." Elaine gave her a nod. Just before stepping out into the cold, she turned back to Carla. "If she tries again, this won't be quiet." Carla didn't blink. "It's not supposed to be." Elaine always lined her medications up like soldiers. Same order, same time, every day. Blood pressure, first white oblong tablets in a standard amber bottle. She never needed to double check. But that morning, something felt off. She unscrewed the cap and paused. It turned too easily. No resistance, no satisfying click of the child-proof seal. She frowned. The bottle felt lighter in her hand. Not by much, but enough. She sat down at the kitchen table, opened her drawer, and pulled out a small notebook she'd started 3 years ago, her med log. Daily initials, dosage, time. She counted the pills in the bottle. 23. Her log said there should be 25. Elaine didn't panic. Instead, she laid the bottle flat on the table like a specimen and reached for her phone. Carla answered on the second ring. "Elaine? I'm missing 2 pills." A pause. "Your log?" Carla asked. "Confirmed. Cap was loose too." "Do not throw it away," Carla said. her voice tightening. Keep it where you found it. Don't use it again. I'll send someone to photograph it. Elaine could hear the rustling of papers on Carla's end. A new page in the file, no doubt. Do you feel okay? Carla asked. I do, but I won't wait to not. The call ended. Elaine left the bottle untouched, sealed it in a sandwich bag, and scribbled the date and time across the label in Sharpie. By the time Lena arrived that afternoon, a storm had rolled in gray skies, cold wind biting at the shutters. She came in with a grocery bag and a second, smaller box tucked under her arm. Thought this might help. She pulled out a sleek pill organizer with a digital lock. Time release. You set the schedule. If someone tries to open it early, it logs the attempt. Elaine examined the device, nodded. Perfect. Lena held up the other box. Fridge cam, magnetic, pairs with your phone. Elaine arched an eyebrow. Fridge? You said she's been helping with groceries, Lena said. You'd be surprised how often the sabotage starts there. Elaine said nothing, but she placed the camera on the top shelf of the fridge that evening. Right next to the almond milk Brittany insisted she drink instead of whole. It faced the door, quiet and unseen. Later that night, after Lena left and the wind outside rattled the siding, Elaine settled into bed with her planner open on her lap. The familiar pages offered routine budget, grocery notes, doctor appointments, but something new caught her eye. A small, square post-it, tucked between pages. The handwriting was delicate, slightly slanted, purple ink. She's been saying weird things about your life insurance. Be careful. M. Elaine traced the edge of the note with her finger. Mia. Of course. She'd always been quiet, but never oblivious. Elaine peeled the note off gently and placed it in the inside flap of her planner behind the grocery coupons and emergency contacts. She didn't cry. She didn't get angry either. She got up. Downstairs, she retrieved a different folderone she hadn't opened in years. Inside were the original power of attorney documents. She'd made them back when Ryan first started helping with the bills, before Brittany came in like static on a clear channel. Elaine laid them out on the dining table. No red pen this time, just a highlighter. She circled every section that needed to change. By morning, she was at Carla's office again. You ready? Carla asked, eyeing the folder. Elaine slid it across the desk. No more chances. Carla didn't ask for explanation. She began drafting immediately. Elaine stood by the window, cordless phone pressed to her ear, voice wrapped in deliberate vulnerability. I've been thinking, she said softly. Maybe I was too harsh. I think I'm ready for another one of your homemade meals. Just no carrots this time. On the other end, Brittany's voice lifted with artificial warmth. Of course, Elaine. I'll make something really special this time. Elaine smiled faintly. Looking forward to it. She hung up and didn't move. Lena, crouched behind the counter with a toolkit, looked up. That was an Emmy-worthy performance. Elaine turned toward her, mask dropped. She won't resist the chance to gloat. Lena snapped the cover on the air sensor shut. It looked like a cheap wall clock, beige and forgettable. This thing will log chemical traces in the air every 10 seconds. I'll be able to pull the data to my phone. If she even waves a bottle of cleaner near the stove, we'll know. Elaine walked over and handed her a hidden key. Front door, just in case. Lena took it without a word. 2 days later, Ryan showed up first, lugging grocery bags and avoiding eye contact. Brittany followed 10 minutes later, makeup too perfect for a casual visit, smile sharp enough to slice a roast. We brought everything for the soup, she sang from the kitchen. Fresh stock, fresh herbs. You'll love it. Elaine sat at the table, cardigan draped loosely around her shoulders, eyes a little too sleepy, voice a little too soft. I'm just going to rest while you cook, she murmured. Meds made me foggy. Brittany's smile tightened. Of course, you do that. From the top of the stairs, Mia watched. Lena had given her the second bowl an identical ceramic twin to the one Brittany would use. While Brittany stirred something at the stove, Mia patted in quietly, said nothing, and switched the bowls. Her timing, surgical. Brittany never even turned. Elaine lay back on the couch, one eye cracked just enough to catch the moment Brittany placed the bowl on the table with the same grin she'd worn last time. The grin she used when pretending to help. Elaine didn't move. Brittany leaned closer. Smells amazing, she cooed. I hope your stomach's stronger today. Then she turned and walked back into the kitchen. Elaine waited until the door clicked. She sat up, pulled out the small vial Lena had slipped her earlier and used the dropper to extract a sample from the steaming surface. Clear container, snap-sealed, labeled with the date and time. She placed it in the insulated bag on the sideboard. Carla's courier would arrive in 20 minutes. She reset the bowl just as it had been. Outside, the wind howled across the porch. Inside, silence, except for the faint beep from the wall-mounted sensor. Lena had programmed it to chirp Ansa softly if it registered something unusual. Elaine glanced at it. Yellow light. Not normal. She leaned back again. Mia came downstairs an hour later with earbuds in, pretending to scroll her phone. She made eye contact with Elaine, gave the subtlest nod, and walked past Brittany without a word. As she reached the stairs again, Brittany called out with fake cheer, "I hope Grandma liked it." "She hasn't said," Mia replied, not looking back. Brittany made a face at the closing door. Then, under her breath but just loud enough for the ceiling-mounted cam Lena had installed the day before to catch, she muttered, "Bon appétit, bat." The email hit Carla's inbox at 8:12 a.m. sharp. Subject line, "Toxicology results confirmed." She didn't wait. By 9 a.m., the formal elder endangerment complaint was logged with the Iowa Department of Human Services. Supporting evidence was encrypted, time-stamped, and cross-referenced. Photos, audio, sensor logs, forensic lab findings every pixel and byte, organized with surgical precision. At 10:42, Elaine stood in front of a camera at Carla's office. She wore a navy sweater, silver studs in her ears, hair combed into soft waves. But it was her eyes steady, unflinching, that carried the weight of the moment. "I am Elaine Porter," she said clearly. "Age 72, retired nutritionist, sole owner of my property. On date, I was served soup that tested positive for chemical cleaning agents. The person who delivered it was Brittany Porter, my daughter-in-law." She looked directly at the lens. This was not a mistake. It was not a joke. And it wasn't the first time. Carla stopped the recording after exactly 5 minutes. No retakes. Elaine nodded once and stood. "Now, we wait." They didn't wait long. By early afternoon, a black, unmarked sedan pulled into the Porter driveway. Brittany was in leggings and a sweatshirt, hair up, no makeup caught off guard. She opened the door with practiced warmth, clearly not recognizing the plain clothes badge clipped to the man's collar. "Brittany Porter?" "Yes. We're with Johnson County Adult Protective Services and the Sheriff's Department. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your recent interactions with your mother-in-law, Elaine Porter." Brittany's eyes flicked over both officers. "Is this a prank?" "We have video and audio evidence we'd like your statement on. May we come in?" She blinked fast, smiled, then laughed. "Wait, is this about the soup thing? Oh my God, Elaine is so dramatic. She always thinks everything smells weird. I used the wrong sponge when I cleaned the pot. It was a mix-up." The officers didn't laugh. One pulled out a phone and tapped the screen. A paused frame. Brittany's face, smirking. Captioned audio. "Bon appétit, old bot." Color drained from her face. "That's taken out of context." They stepped inside. An hour later, Ryan got the call. He was at the hardware store, buying drywall anchors he didn't need. His voice cracked the moment Brittany said the word investigation. "I'll come home," he muttered. Elaine, meanwhile, was in her living room. Mia sat beside her, flipping through an old yearbook. When the knock came, Elaine rose calmly. Ryan stood in the doorway, face pale, hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket. "She said they're twisting it," he began. "You know how Brittany talks. She jokes. People joke." Elaine didn't answer. "She said you're angry because we didn't ask before moving in." Mia appeared silently beside Elaine, holding her phone out. Video cued. Brittany's voice filled the hallway, unmistakable. "She thinks she's going to outlive me," the recording hissed. "Joke's on her. She doesn't even taste anything anymore." Ryan's shoulders slumped. "Where'd you get that?" Mia's voice was barely a whisper. "She said it on speaker. I was in the hallway." He looked at his daughter, then at his mother. "You're serious about this?" Elaine nodded. "It's attempted endangerment, Ryan. Not a bad meal, not a mistake. A crime." He didn't speak. She stepped closer, voice low. "If you stay with her, you sync with her. I won't save you twice." His mouth opened, then closed. No words came. Elaine shut the door. Inside, the house was quiet again. Elaine turned to Mia. You okay? Mia nodded slowly. You? Elaine gave a faint smile. Getting there. Elaine watched from the hallway window as the locksmith's van idled outside her home. It was just past 8 a.m., cold and dry. The kind of January morning where breath hung in the air longer than spoken words. She'd already emptied the lockbox. The keys Brittany once had copied behind her back, handed off to Ryan, then used as if the house where theirs were now meaningless. The man in the navy parka swapped out the front deadbolt with swift efficiency. Want the back and basement doors done too? He asked. Elaine nodded. Every last one. By noon, every access point had been replaced, recoded, or reinforced. Garage opener reprogrammed. Alarm system reset. Wi-Fi name changed. Passwords rewritten. Even the spare key under the birdbath holdover from a more trusting life was gone. Inside, Lena set down 2 cardboard boxes on the coffee table. Found her stuff in the downstairs bathroom, she said. Half-used lotion, protein powder, some expensive dry shampoo. Elaine looked down at the labels. The presence of Brittany still clung to the house in small, perfumed echoes. She picked up one of the bottles and dropped it into the box like it was something rotting. I want it all gone. Lena didn't ask where to take it. Curb or burn? Elaine considered. Curb for now. Fire's too clean. Lena grinned. I'll take it out back. As the boxes disappeared through the door, Elaine sat at the dining table and opened her laptop. Her fingers typed with practiced certainty. Online banking, insurance portals, brokerage login. One by one, the locks fell into place. New passwords, 2-factor authentication. She called her utility company and revoked every user access tied to Ryan's email. Every trace of them digitally and physically was being wiped from her home like smoke cleared from a sealed room. Just before shutting down her email for the day, a message popped up. From Brittany Porter. Subject: Unbelievable. Body: You're ruining this family. You've lost your mind and let that lawyer fill your head with poison. Don't expect us to come running when you fall again. Elaine read it once, then typed back slowly. Subject: Response: I didn't ruin anything. I saved it from poison. Literal and otherwise. She hit send, then archived the thread. That evening, Mia knocked on Elaine's bedroom door with a soft tap. Can I put some stuff in your closet? She asked. Elaine turned, surprised. Of course, but why not your room? Mia hesitated, then shrugged. Just feels better up here. Elaine didn't press. She shifted aside a few old handbags and watched Mia gently place a duffel and 2 folded sweatshirts on the top shelf. Yours always smells like cedar, Mia said quietly. Elaine smiled. That's because I keep lavender sachets between the sweaters. Old habit. Mia smiled back, then lingered. You know, she said, not quite looking up. It's weird. I used to think this house belonged to all of us, but it didn't. Not really. Elaine nodded slowly. Now it does. To the right people. They stood there a moment, quiet. Then Elaine's phone buzzed. A private number. She let it ring, ignored it. Then a second buzz this time. A voicemail alert. She picked it up, tapped play. Brittany's voice, sharp and bitter, filled the air. You think you've won something? All you did was show your age. I could have helped you. We could have had it all in writing. But now? Now you get nothing but isolation. Elaine hit delete before it finished. Elaine sat perfectly upright on the caramel leather couch in Carla's office, legs crossed at the ankle, fingers laced tightly in her lap. Across from her, Dr. April Levin flipped the last page of her cognitive evaluation clipboard and looked up. No signs of cognitive decline, the doctor said calmly. Orientation, recall, executive functional, excellent. Elaine gave a small, proud nod. Good genes, better boundaries. Carla leaned against the edge of her desk, arms crossed. Will you provide the formal affidavit? Dr. Levin smiled faintly. Already emailed, signed and notarized. Elaine exhaled not relief, but confirmation. Another defense against the smear she knew was coming. Brittany's claiming diminished capacity? She asked. Carla gave a short nod. Classic maneuver. Weaponize age when abuse doesn't stick. Elaine shook her head once, lips pursed. She should have studied me more carefully. Carla opened a file folder, revealing a stack of printed statements. We're filing this affidavit with your existing case. It shows that any accusation of financial mismanagement or instability has no basis. But I also want to attach your financial records. Full transparency. Elaine pulled a second folder from her bag, neatly tabbed. Tax returns, savings reports, trust disbursements, brokerage summaries, color-coded like she'd done in her nutrition, days yellow for income, blue for assets, red for revisions. Carla's brows lifted slightly. You did this yourself? Didn't want anyone claiming I needed help balancing a checkbook. That afternoon, Ryan was called to give a statement. He never showed. When Carla called to confirm attendance, Ryan's voice was muffled and detached. I didn't ask for this. I'm not choosing sides. I just want this to go away. It won't, Carla said flatly. He hung up. Elaine didn't comment. She only reached across Carla's desk and picked up a form titled Restraining Order Request, Initial Filing. The pen hovered in her hand for half a second. Brittany only? Carla asked. Elaine shook her head. Both. Across town, Mia sat in a deposition room at the county courthouse, hands folded, eyes cast downward. She says things when she thinks no one's listening, Mia said quietly. She talks about Grandma like she's garbage, like she's waiting for her to fade out. I've heard her say stuff like, when the old bat finally forgets where the kitchen is, we'll get the whole house. The court officer raised an eyebrow. Did she say this directly to you? No, Mia said. She said it around me. The officer clicked his pen shut. That's all I need. Back at home, Elaine stood in her living room, staring at the now empty hallway table where a framed family photo used to sit. Only a faint rectangle of dust remained. Lena arrived just past sunset, bringing a casserole and a bottle of ginger ale. They're cornered, she said, handing Elaine the foil-covered dish. Cornered animals flail. They don't strategize. Elaine nodded. I don't flinch. You don't, Lena agreed. But you do prep like a sniper. Elaine smiled faintly. 40 years of meal planning has its uses. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She didn't answer but this time. She saved the voicemail. Brittany's voice crackled through later that night. You want to play the victim? Fine. But you're dragging Ryan into this like some hostage. What kind of mother does that? Elaine forwarded the message straight to Carla. The next morning, she arrived at the county clerk's office just as the doors opened. She handed over 2 envelopes sewn with the restraining order filings. The other with the financial affidavit and waited as the clerk stamped each page. Everything official. Everything filed. The news segment was less than 2 minutes long. An aerial shot of a quiet street in Cedar Rapids. A split-screen image of a smiling elderly woman next to blurred footage of Brittany being approached by plainclothes detectives. A reporter's voiceover. An attempted poisoning case is unfolding in Johnson County, where authorities say a 72-year-old woman survived what investigators now call a deliberate act of endangerment. Family members are under scrutiny, and legal filings suggest financial motives may be involved. Elaine watched the broadcast in silence from her kitchen table, hands folded in her lap. The TV's glow flickered across the ceramic tile floor, reflected in the same spot where Brittany had once laid down that first steaming bowl of from-scratch soup. She didn't look away. I told you it would go public, Carla had warned the day before. The file's too detailed. Once it hits the docket, they'll come sniffing. Elaine had nodded. Let them. Now she sat in front of her laptop and opened a blank document. No frills, no formatting, just the truth, written in 12-point font, black and cold. Silence is how harm survives. I've been silent for too long. I was poisoned, not just by chemicals, but by neglect, entitlement, and manipulation wrapped in family ties. I didn't imagine it. I didn't misunderstand, and I'm not confused. My name is Elaine Porter. I am 72, and I am done being silent. She signed it at the bottom, saved it as statement, final, PDF, and sent it to Carla with a short subject line, make it count. By noon, the story had spread. Local news sites picked it up. A legal blog reposted the statement in full. One small tweet, Grandma didn't drink the soup. She served the subpoena. Went viral, shared over 6,000 times. Carla texted her a thumbs-up emoji and followed it with a link. Exhibit C, public character evidence. Attached, Brittany's now deleted tweets from months earlier. Snide remarks about elderly drama queens. Instagram captions mocking the death stare from Mother Porter. And most Dominga private email where she described Elaine as a slow-moving asset. Elaine read every word. Every mask Brittany had worn was now archived in court. Ryan, meanwhile, vanished. He didn't respond to emails, texts, or certified letters. Carla's assistant confirmed he hadn't shown up for the mediation session scheduled that morning. His phone was off, his voicemail box full. The house he and Brittany had been renting was suddenly listed on Zillow. Elaine stood by the hallway window later that evening, watching snow begin to fall over her now silent street. The world outside seemed to pause like even the weather held its breath. Mia appeared at her side, clutching a folder. "What's this?" Elaine asked. "I got the school form signed for winter semester. And this." She opened the folder. Inside, paperwork for guardianship designation. One form already signed by Mia's biological mother. Another pre-filled by Carla's paralegal. "I thought," Mia said, eyes wide and honest, "maybe if something ever happened, it should come to me, not them." Elaine didn't speak. She just wrapped her arms around her granddaughter and pulled her close. "You're not just surviving," Lena said from behind them, voice warm and hoarse. "You're winning." Elaine looked back at her. "Not alone." Lena stepped forward, arms open. "Not ever." The three of them stood in the quiet house, the sound of the snow pattering gently against the windows, the weight of years slowly lifting. The court date arrived with sharp skies and brittle wind. Elaine wore a deep charcoal coat and a burgundy wool scarf, her silver hair pinned with clean precision. Mia walked beside her, silent, composed, no earbuds today. Inside the courthouse, the civil docket moved briskly until Porter versus Porter was called. Elaine sat with Carla at her side, a binder of evidence on the table between them. Brittany walked in alone, hair curled tight, blazer 2 sizes too expensive for the moment. No Ryan. She didn't look at Elaine. Carla stood first. "Your Honor, this is a retaliatory suit defamation and financial harassment. Based on the public statement my client released after Brittany Porter became the subject of a criminal elder abuse investigation." Brittany interrupted with a tight voice. "She's trying to destroy my name. I was never charged, and now I'm being dragged through the mud for a pot of soup." The judge, a tall man with lined eyes and a silver watch, leaned back. "Miss Porter, you'll have your turn. Miss Reyes?" Carla opened the binder. Tabs marked in red, blue, and green. Surveillance transcripts, voice recordings, forensic lab results, email and social post screenshots, timeline cross-referenced with legal filings. "We're prepared to present all supporting evidence, Your Honor, but given the volume and clarity, we request an expedited dismissal under Rule 1.420. The judge flipped through the top sheet, then another, then paused at a printed transcript of Brittany's voice. "She'll be out of the picture soon. I don't care how we do it. I'm done waiting." He turned back to Brittany. "This is your voice?" Brittany's mouth moved before any sound came out. "That was taken out of context." The judge raised a hand. "Context doesn't make threats less actionable." Carla didn't move. Elaine didn't blink. 30 minutes later, the judge closed the file, removed his glasses, and spoke plainly. "Motion to dismiss is granted. Counterclaim unsupported by law or fact. All legal fees incurred by the defendant will be paid by the plaintiff, effective immediately." The gavel cracked like a bone. Brittany stood so quickly her chair screeched. "You can't do this. She's orchestrating a smear campaign." The bailiff stepped between her and the bench. Her voice rose, shrill, cracking. "She turned my daughter against me. You think this is justice?" She turned and saw Mia in the gallery, standing still in her black peacoat, watching. Brittany froze, just for a beat, then stormed out, heels echoing like gunshots against marble. Elaine didn't look back. Carla turned to her, calm as ever. "That went faster than I expected." Elaine gathered her coat. She's always been more drama than detail. They walked out into the cold, where Lena waited near the parking lot with the heater running and hot coffee in hand. "Let me guess," she said, handing Elaine a cup. "Theater." Then silence. Elaine nodded. She flailed. Lena smirked. And the girl? Elaine glanced over at Mia, who was now walking beside them. Expression unreadable. She didn't flinch. That night, Elaine lit a fire and sat with her laptop on the couch. She was reviewing the insurance company's last report, skimming terms she already understood: primary beneficiary, modification signature, policy access history, when a new email appeared. Subject: internal audit follow. Up fraudulent signature confirmed. Elaine opened it. Elaine? As part of our audit response, our forensics department has concluded that the beneficiary change request submitted on your policy was not authorized. The signature was forged, and the form submitted digitally from an IP address traced to a known associate of Brittany Porter. Timestamp: 2 weeks prior to the soup incident. We've escalated this to state regulators for insurance fraud investigation. Senior Compliance Officer, Hawthorne Mutual. Elaine read it 3 times. She stood, walked to the file cabinet, and removed a folder labeled Insurance, Legal Hold. She slipped the printout inside, then called Carla. I need a fraud affidavit filed. Immediately. The meeting was held in a sterile conference room, 2 floors above a regional branch of Hawthorne Mutual. Pale blue carpeting, cheap chairs, a faint, lemon-scented cleaner that couldn't hide the staleness of procedural air. Elaine sat across from the compliance officer, a tidy woman in a navy blazer, who wore her hair in a knot that matched her tone-tight, direct, unshakable. We've reviewed the metadata and the document trail, the officer said, sliding a laminated evidence sheet across the table. Your digital signature was fabricated using a lifted scan from a 2009 tax return. It was uploaded from an IP address linked to a tenant Wi-Fi at a property rented under your son's name. Elaine didn't flinch. And the change? Brittany Porter was named sole beneficiary of your policy. The change was submitted 15 days before your poisoning report. Elaine nodded. So? Motive documented. The officer gave a grim smile. It's now insurance fraud. Class D felony. We've frozen all claims and flagged her in the state system. Our legal division has already begun coordination with regulators. Elaine placed her pen gently on the table. You'll send copies of all findings to my attorney. They're already in her inbox. Outside, the Iowa wind pressed against the windows. A faint whistle echoed through the HVAC ducts. Elaine reached for her coat without looking back. By the time she arrived at Carla's office, the new draft of her estate plan was already waiting on the desk. I made the changes you requested, Carla said. All funds now flow directly into the trust you set up for Mia, contingent on her guardianship status and age. Elaine scanned the document line by line. Every word was deliberate, every clause unshakable. No one else gets access? She asked. Carla shook her head. Not a cent. Elaine signed without hesitation. Later that evening, back at the house, Lena stood in the kitchen drying a dish that didn't need drying, watching Elaine finish sealing the latest legal envelope for Carla's career. She really thought she'd rewrite your ending, Lena said. Elaine looked up. She tried to script my exit before I'd even said my final line. Lena smirked. If she wanted your ending, she just wrote her own. From the living room, Mia called out, Can I come in? Elaine turned. Of course, honey. Mia walked in, holding a large manila envelope, her school project on women in law. She placed it gently on the table, then looked up. I read everything, she said quietly. The emails, the court stuff, the policy report. Elaine studied her, unsure of what the girl would say next. I'll never forget what she tried to do, Mia continued, her voice tight but clear. Or what you did instead. Elaine stood, crossed the space between them, and pulled her into a quiet embrace. No fanfare, just warmth and safety, and the sense that some lines in a family don't break, they redraw. Outside, the snow had started again, gentle, quiet, like a reset. Mia pulled back and gave a faint smile. Also, I started keeping all her texts, just in case. Elaine blinked. You still talk to her? Mia looked away. Sometimes she finds a way to message me. New numbers, weird emails. She says she just wants to explain. Elaine nodded slowly. Let Carla know. We add that to the file. The warmth of the room returned, but under it, a faint ripple of unease. Brittany was still trying to reach the only person she hadn't completely lost. The courthouse was packed. Local reporters lined the benches along the back wall, pens poised, eyes sharp. Elaine sat near the front beside Carla, her posture tall and measured, hands resting loosely over a notepad she had no intention of using. On the other side of the courtroom, Brittany hunched beside a defense attorney whose posture screamed damage control. There were no cameras, just eyes, and silence so thick it pressed against the glass-paneled doors. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. The judge entered without glancing at either side. His robe was crisp, his expression unreadable. Case 504, J. the State of Iowa versus Brittany Elaine Porter. Elaine didn't blink at the use of Brittany's full name. She stared straight ahead. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, we've reached a plea agreement." The judge looked toward the defense table. "Miss Porter?" Brittany's voice cracked when she spoke. "I plead no contest to the charges of reckless endangerment, attempted fraud, and unauthorized use of protected medical and financial information." Elaine closed her eyes briefly. 1 beat. 2. The judge read from the file. "Defendant will accept 12 months of probation, court-ordered psychological counseling, full restitution of legal costs, and the entry of a permanent restraining order on behalf of Elaine Porter and Mia Alston." He lowered the paper. "Is that understood?" Brittany nodded mutely. "Very well. Let the record reflect the plea agreement has been accepted. The sentence stands." Then, the judge looked directly at Elaine. "You may speak if you wish." Elaine rose, not hurried, not hesitant. "I came into this courtroom to protect what was mine," she said, voice clear but low. "My name, my health, my legacy. I never asked to be pitied. I asked to be believed." She glanced briefly toward Brittany just long enough to make it known. "I lived in silence longer than anyone should. But silence is a choice. So is harm. And today, this courtroom chose clarity." She nodded once and sat back down. The room remained still. No coughs, no whispers, just the turning of one very final page. The judge's gavel came down less a bang than a confirmation. "We are adjourned." Brittany's chair scraped backward. Her hands were shaking. Her attorney whispered something probably about protocols, but she didn't hear it. Her eyes darted across the room, scanning the benches, looking for Ryan, for Mia, for someone. No one rose to meet her. The bailiff escorted her to the back. Her steps faltered halfway down the aisle. She turned once. Mia was seated beside Lena in the second row. She stared back at Brittany with the expression of someone watching a curtain finally. Close. No blink. No tears. Just peace. Outside, the sky had cleared. Cold sun spilled across the courthouse steps. Carla took off her sunglasses and exhaled. "You just made case law," she said to Elaine. "This will be cited for years." Elaine offered a small smile. "Then let them read it all the way to the end." She looked back at the courthouse, door still swinging slowly shut. "I want people to know it's never too late to lock the door or open your mouth." Carla nodded. "And you did both?" Lena approached with the car keys and Mia in tow. "Told you," she said. "You don't need fire when you have facts." Elaine touched Mia's hand as they walked. "You okay?" Mia didn't answer right away. Then, "She looked for me in that room, but I didn't move." "You didn't need to," Elaine said. "You already left." The envelope arrived by certified mail, cream-colored with a blue security stripe and a return address stamped in bold, Johnson County Recorder's Office. Elaine didn't open it right away. She placed it gently on the table and made herself a cup of black tea. No honey, no lemon, just heat and clarity. When she finally slid the letter opener under the flap and pulled out the folded document, her fingers didn't shake. Deed of ownership. Elaine Porter, sole owner. Parcel number 171, CO 139, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. No footnotes, no cosigners, no inherited complications. She stared at the ink until it felt real, until the name on the page and the woman holding it felt like the same person again. Mia appeared behind her, barefoot, hoodie sleeves pulled over her palms. "Is that it?" Elaine held it out, wordlessly. Mia read it twice, then grinned. "Your house, fully yours." Elaine nodded once, finally. Later that afternoon, she pulled the old deed from the drawer beneath the hallway hutch. The one Brittany had insisted they filed jointly for tax efficiency. Her name was printed there too, in all caps Brittany Elaine Porter. Elaine grabbed a black pen. Thick, slow strokes carved Brittany's name into oblivion. One long line, a second, cleaner one beneath it. Then she framed it, hung it in the hallway where the old family portrait used to sit. History matters, she said to Mia, especially when it's rewritten. Together, they moved through the house with measured purpose. Gone were the sterile beige curtains Brittany had picked, out replaced with warm ochre linen. Gone were the cheap mirrors and glossy faux modern vases, replaced by mismatched ceramics and old quilts. The air smelled like lemon balm and floor polish. It smelled lived in again. The last to go were the dishes every single plate, bowl, and mug Brittany had ever brought into the house. Mia dropped them into cardboard boxes marked donate. Elaine didn't blink. I don't even remember her ever cooking, Mia said. She just plated things. Elaine smiled faintly. She always wanted the credit without the cleanup. At dusk, Lena arrived with a bottle of champagne in one hand and a bag of frozen croissants in the other. Baked goods, she said. Because nothing says power like carbs and bubbles. Elaine laughed. Come in. They toasted in the Kitcheno ceremony, just ease. Lena poured 3 mismatched glasses, bubbles rising like punctuation. 2 endings, she said. To clean kitchens, Mia added. Elaine raised her glass last. Her voice was quiet but firm. To the kitchen, where I make the soup now. They clinked gently. The champagne tasted dry and a little bitter. It was perfect. They sat around the kitchen table for hours talking about everything but the trial. Old family recipes, favorite shows, Mia's essay topic for English class. Peace didn't announce itself. It just settled in, soft and certain. By the time Mia went to bed, the house felt changed, not cleansed claimed. Elaine lingered by the window, staring out into the moonlit yard. The birdbath glinted faintly in the corner. The garden soil slept beneath a thin frost. You really going to hang that deed on the wall? Lena asked, nodding toward the framed paper with Brittany's name struck through like a crime scene redaction. Elaine smiled. It's not about spite. It's about proof. She turned, took a final sip of champagne, and set the glass in the sink. But maybe a little spite. The segment aired on a Tuesday morning. Elaine sat stiffly on the edge of the floral armchair Lena had helped her reupholster. A camera crew from KCRG had arrived 20 minutes early, polite and efficient, setting up in her sunlit living room. The anchor, a young woman with clean diction and soft eyes, had told Elaine gently, just speak the truth. The rest edits itself. She had. And now? It was everywhere. The chyron read, Cedar Rapids woman survives poisoning and speaks out. A montage rolled. Elaine walking through her garden in a navy coat. A wide shot of her framed deed hanging in the hallway. A close-up of the framed court order. Then a tight shot of her face calm, resolute. I wasn't confused. I wasn't fragile. I was targeted, and I didn't stay quiet. Mia watched from the kitchen, earbuds pulled halfway out, frozen mid-sip of orange juice. Lena leaned on the doorway, arms crossed, blinking hard. You're not just a survivor, she murmured. You're a damn signal flare. Elaine turned off the television after the segment ended. Not because she couldn't watch, but because she didn't need to. The real story had already played out in every step she'd taken since the spoon never touched her lips. By that afternoon, Carla called. You're getting requests, she said, sounding more amused than overwhelmed. National elder advocacy groups. One's offering to feature your testimony in a campaign. Another wants to use your story for staff training. And Carla paused. I've been invited to speak at the National Conference on Legal Protection for Vulnerable Adults. They want a co-keynote. With you. Elaine raised an eyebrow. Me? They're calling you a precedent. Elaine didn't laugh. She just looked toward the kitchen. The soup bowl shelf now occupied by hand-thrown pottery, she and Mia picked out at the winter market. No one expects an old woman with a notebook to become evidence, she said softly. Maybe that's the point. By nightfall, her inbox held more than 100 messages, some angry, most reverent, 2 from women in other states asking how they could start the same legal process. One subject line simply read, I'm not crazy either. Thank you. The next morning, Elaine pushed the television tray away and opened a fresh Word document. Title, A Clean Cup, Notes from a Poisoned Life. She didn't think of it as a memoir. Not really. More like a manual. She wrote the first line without hesitation. If someone's smiling while handing you silence, spit it out. Later that week, Mia stood just off camera during a second news interview, this one for a national network. She wore a blazer Elaine had ironed and lip balm that smelled like vanilla. She didn't speak, just watched. Elaine's voice carried through the monitor. The hardest part wasn't the soup. It was what came before the erosion of being heard. That's what people like Brittany count on. They don't try to kill you in one go. They wear you down until you don't believe what you see, until you stop trusting your own breath. The interviewer asked her what she wanted most, now that it was all over. Elaine didn't hesitate. For it to not end with me. That night, Lena brought over dinner actual soup. This time, garlic and wild rice, warm and rich. They ate on the porch, wrapped in blankets, the fire pit crackling at their feet. Now they know what we've known all along, Lena said between bites. Elaine didn't answer right away. She was watching the fire, expression thoughtful. You think people will actually change? She finally asked. Lena shrugged. Maybe not. But now they can't say they didn't know. The smell of rosemary and roasted garlic filled the kitchen, thick and earthy. The windows were cracked just slightly to let out the steam, and the low hum of jazz played from a Bluetooth speaker tucked behind the spice rack. Elaine stood over the stove, apron tied neatly around her waist, wooden spoon in hand. This time, the soup was real. From scratch, nothing hidden. The broth simmered gently, onions, caramelized, slow and golden, carrots sliced at a soft diagonal, celery so fresh it still held morning dew when she'd chopped it, chicken pulled by hand, tender and precise, fresh thyme, bay leaf, a dash of lemon for lift. No shortcuts, no deceit, just warmth. Mia set the table in the next roomcloth napkins, stemmed glasses, and mismatched plates they'd scavenged together from antique stores and flea markets, each one carrying a tiny chip or story. Carla arrived first, coat slung over her arm, a pie in a bakery box balanced in the other hand. Smells better than my entire law school cafeteria ever did. You'll get real silverware tonight, Elaine said. No deposit slips and stale vending machine soup. They both laughed. Carla set the pie down and slipped into the kitchen to steal a sample from the pot. She didn't ask permission. Lena followed 10 minutes later, cheeks pink from the cold, a bottle of wine under one arm and a loaf of fresh sourdough tucked into the other. Bread, she declared, in case the soup goes existential. Elaine waved her in. You're late. We almost started philosophizing without you. By the time the soup hit the bowls, steaming and golden, dotted with fresh parsley, they were all gathered at the table. The lights were dim but not dark, just enough to make the room feel full, lived in. Mia leaned over her bowl and took a deep breath. It smells like real food, she said. Not fear. The others paused. Then Carla chuckled softly. That might be the best compliment a cook can get. Elaine sat at the head of the table, her hands folded for a moment before reaching for her glass. Let's eat. Spoons clinked gently. Conversation wandered Mia's writing project, a case Carla had just closed. The time Lena had gotten into a shouting match with a checkout clerk who tried to scan a watermelon as a cantaloupe. They laughed. Elaine didn't rush. She wasn't watching the door. She wasn't thinking about what had been stolen, only what she had reclaimed. At one point, Lena leaned closer and narrowed her eyes. Is that necklace new? Elaine touched the delicate silver chain at her collarbone, a single charma tiny soup spoon, no bigger than her thumb. Restitution check cleared last week, she said. I figured I'd wear the reminder. Of what? Mia asked. Elaine smiled. That I don't need to borrow power. I make it now. They toasted again, no speech this time. Just glasses raised and clinked gently above chipped porcelain and real soup. There were no reporters, no judge, no court docket, no transcripts, just 4 women, 4 chairs, and a table that now held stories instead of silence. Later, as the dishes soaked and candles burned low, Elaine stepped outside for a moment. The night was crisp. The porch light cast a soft arc across the snow-dusted yard. Somewhere down the block, wind chimes played. She turned as the door creaked open behind her. Mia leaned out, holding 2 mugs of cider. You okay? Elaine took the mug. Warmth curled around her fingers. I'm not angry anymore, she said quietly. That surprises me. Mia sat beside her on the porch swing. Me too. They rocked gently in silence, the creak of the chain a soft metronome. Elaine's necklace glinted in the porch light. I used to think peace was quiet, Elaine said. But it's not. It's choice. It's showing up with the spoon in your hand. Mia nodded, then glanced toward the house. You know, the fire's almost out. Want me to add a log? Elaine looked through the window. Inside, Lena and Carla were laughing over pie, the room golden and alive. No, Elaine said. Let it burn down. We don't need heat tonight. Just the light. The papers were signed before noon. Elaine held the folder in her lap as Carla reviewed the last signatures, her glasses perched low, lips silently counting off initials and notarized stamps. That's it, Carla said finally, clicking her pen closed. The estate now transfers in full. Title, trust, bank accounts, life policy. It's hers when the time comes. Contingent, clear. Elaine didn't nod. She just pressed the folder closed and set it in the wooden file box by the hutch. Next to it was a second envelope, this one addressed to the local bar association. Inside, a check. Seed funding. Modest, but real. A grant application had already been approved, the Elaine Porter Fund for Elder Defense Services. Legal aid for seniors who didn't have family lawyers or surveillance cameras, for those whose silences never made it to court. You didn't have to, Carla had said when Elaine first proposed it. Elaine had only replied, exactly why I did. Later that afternoon, Carla returned this time with a frame wrapped in brown paper. I don't usually hand deliver, she said, setting it down on the kitchen counter. But this isn't legal. It's personal. Elaine peeled the paper back slowly. Inside, behind museum-quality glass, was a single printed line in gold serif. In honor of survivors who fought back, awarded to Elaine Porter for setting precedent with grace. Below it, the seal of the National Elder Justice Coalition. Elaine stared at it for a long time. She didn't cry, didn't speak. She just picked it up and walked to the hallway wall, the one where Brittany's scratched-out deed had once hung, and gently replaced it with this. New truth, no edits. An hour before dusk, she pulled on her walking shoes and stepped into the yard. The garden trail behind the house was barely thawed, muddy in places, but the crocuses were pushing up stubbornly, purple tips breaking winter's spell. She followed the narrow path past the shed and compost bins, past the crooked fence Brittany once called an eyesore, and into the open back clearing. Bare trees stood in tall rows, their silence like sentries. The same space where she'd once taught Mia how to whistle with grass blades and named every plant in Latin just to make her laugh. She walked slowly. No cane, no hesitation, just freedom. Lena caught up 5 minutes later, coffee in one hand, scarf flapping loose at her neck. Didn't think you'd come out here today, she said. Elaine smiled. Didn't think I'd get the chance. Lena offered the second coffee without a word. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, watching a cardinal pick at something on the ground beneath the oak. It's quiet, Lena said. Elaine took a sip. It's earned. They stayed like that for a moment, no talking. No noise until Elaine broke the silence. Funny, she murmured. One spoon of soup started all this. Lena chuckled softly. A hell of a spoon. Elaine nodded. Her fingers tightened briefly around the paper coffee cup. The garden around them felt alive, waiting. She didn't feel haunted anymore, just rooted. She glanced toward the house, her house. The windows glowed faintly gold, the porch swing swaying slightly in the wind. She turned back toward the trail, her voice soft, final. She handed me poison. I handed her just this one documented bite at a time.